Hi there, I'm here with my good friend Dave Smith. Well, I say MBE, Dave. Dave Smith M.B.E.
Okay, yeah.
Dave and I are from the same part of the world, so you have to kind of dial into our accents a little bit as well. I think I've known Dave for about 15 years, I think, Dave. I first met you at Lofer.
Yeah, and, with the ski team.
With the ski team. And Dave's background, I'll let Dave kind of explain a little bit about his history and what he's done and why it's relevant to what's going on just now. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you deal almost with the isolation just now and what's going on, and how do you keep yourself fit mentally, kind of emotionally and physically as well, and not just kind of survive. I think it's still setting yourself up to thrive a little bit as well. I think when I first met Dave, you were doing the bobsleigh.
Yeah. It would have been back in 2006, 2005, probably. Yeah.
Great. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your history and that in sport then?
I've been in sport my whole life. I've competed for Great Britain. I've been inside some of Britain's best, most successful sports. I spent 4 years in the British rowing team, 7 years in the British cycling team. I also coached with the British ski team for a while. I also dabbled in a little bit of bobsleigh athletics and in karate as well. Recently, I've been working as a sort of performance advisor for the British karate team as we move into an Olympic cycle. But I think that probably my most valuable experiences to share with people is maybe not from the world of sport, but actually from the world of hospital and what it's like to be in ICU. I've spent the last 10 years battling a life-threatening tumour in my spinal cord, which has sort of succumbed me to 6 spinal operations, 7 weeks of radiation, and a long chunk of time in ICU fighting for my life. So I think the lessons that I've learned predominantly from that journey is probably more powerful and relevant to people in the current climate that we face at the moment. And also, obviously, sport gives you an underlying resilience. So I think for me, the world of sport and hospital have kind of gone hand in hand, and they've both benefited each other, and they've both worked very well parallel to each other over the last sort of 10, 15 years.
And I think that's a great point, even what we'll can talk about that is, I think sometimes when we talk about sport and both of us, are in that arena where it's, high performance and elite sport, sometimes either if you're not in that arena, you think it's almost kind of separate from being human or separate from normal life, and it's not, isn't it? That's the thing that really, what impresses me about yourself is your humility and that thing about, our humanness, and more than anything just now, it's that how we kind of nurture our own human nature and also help other people to nurture it as well. What's been the big lessons you've taken away? I know there's a lot, but
one of the most important lessons I've ever taken away from all of this was from Viktor Frankl. I started reading Viktor Frankl's work in 2016, and for those of you who are not familiar with Viktor Frankl, he survived 4 concentration camps. He was a survivor of Auschwitz, and he was a psychologist. And when he went through the camps and came out the other side, he went on to be a very famous neurologist, professor of neuroscience, professor of psychiatry, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And within that book, he spoke very poignantly about the why over the how. And I think as a society, we become very focused on how we live. And that's influenced by their Instagram influencers, all these, we've got to have a nicer car, be happy, we've got to have all this stuff. And it's very much focused on the how. And he spoke about, you really need to understand your why. So what's your philosophy and who you are as a person, your values, and the reason you are who you are. And for me, I realized that the man who knows his why can survive anyhow. So, at the moment that is very poignant, and I would encourage everyone right now to go and grab Victor's book and read it, because this is the first time as a society we've been challenged on a mass level to experience trauma. And for me, what I learned through all my hospital, through the paralysis, through everything that's happened to me in surgery, was that the one thing that kept me going and gave me the ultimate resilience was that I knew my why. And I worked very hard on my philosophy. And my philosophy was always to live where my feet are.
Yeah.
To be present. Yeah. And my why in life is that I want to help other people. I want to take what I've learned and share it with others, and ultimately to be humble. And I think that, you know, the society of how we live is creating a society of less compassionate human beings and people that are full of judgment to themselves and judgments to others. So really why I learned through this journey was that to come from a place of compassion. Mm. And you can come from it's so much easier to come from a place of compassion if you understand your why and you know your philosophy, because then ultimately you become at ease with yourself. Yeah. And in a lot of society, through the process of judgment and the how, we become at dis-ease in our body. And you can see that at the moment, the whole world is in a state of dis-ease. And that is a disease. Yeah. And, you know, where people are trapped at home, they don't know how to deal with it. There's a huge amount of uncertainty around it. We're in a tunnel and there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we don't know how long the tunnel is. So what do we do as far as coping strategies at the moment to deal with the darkness that we're in? Mm. And this was one thing I faced in hospital when I walked into surgery in 2016, fully fit, and I woke up after a 10-hour surgery paralyzed down one side of my body from the neck down. And, you know, I thought I was going to be in hospital for a week. 4 months later, I was still lying in a hospital bed looking at a roof. So you have to really pull on the strength of your mind, and you want to be able to, like you say, you want to be able to thrive in that situation, not survive. Yeah.
I think that's just such high level kind of awareness that you're giving everyone, Dave. And I agree. I think Viktor Frankl's work's amazing, and how it was put to me when I first started reading it was great. You know, like when you're growing up, you know, your mom says to you, you know, I just want you to be happy. You know, and if you chase that, of course, you can't be happy all the time. So if that's taken away from you, what you do. And then the other way, it's the equivalent of someone else, your dad or someone else to you, saying, and we live in, again, this world, as long as I'm successful, then I'm all right. And of course, success is fleeting. It comes and goes. So isn't it that way, even though I have a sense of meaning, I'm all right if happiness isn't there fleetingly or success isn't there. I've got that thing there. That's great. And I just recommended, carry on.
No, and it's okay to have the bad days, and I think this is again back to the how, because the how is trying to teach people that you've always got to be happy, you've always got to be looking a certain way, and so if we chase this how, we're actually chasing happiness, and if you try to chase happiness, then you're not really happy in yourself, and happiness doesn't come from external things, and that's the how. Happiness only truly comes from when you know your why. If you work out why you're here and why your life is, you know, what your philosophy, then you can really start to embrace happiness that comes from within. And I think that's the danger now, and this has been challenged massively in the current climate that we're in, and there's all these people having huge amounts of panic attacks and stress about just being locked up inside. And I actually think this is rather than focus on the problem, focus on the solution. And if you actually think, well, this is a time where I can grow and work on my self-awareness. When I was paralyzed in hospital and I lay there, I thought, okay, I can't just get up and walk out of here. Like, as much as I want to, I can't. And I realized, well, what can I do in this situation? Not what can't I do? And I thought, well, I can train my mind. I've always wanted to study these courses. I've always wanted to read the workings of Viktor Frankl, read some of the great philosophers and trying to understand the meaning of life. And Viktor said it beautifully at the end of his book when he said that life is almost like a movie. Every picture in a movie has a meaning, and you only truly understand the meaning when you get to the end of the movie. If you try to understand the movie and halfway through, you won't understand it. You need to get to the end of the movie. And life is almost like that as well, that maybe we truly understand it when we're right at the very end. And I think that was my gift, that because I've had to fight for my life so many times in ICU, I've actually seen the end of life. So I wouldn't proclaim to know the meaning of life, but in a sort of weird way, I've actually been there right to the end and seen it. And that's where I realized that actually the how is irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. The real thing that matters is the why. And that's when you're at the end and you've taken your last breath, the only thing you have is memories. And memories are created through experiences and enriching experiences. So why we chase the how is beyond me. We should be chasing the why and creating memories experiences.
I think that's again just such a rich area, Dave, isn't it? When you look at it about the hows, and sometimes in the modern world, and I'm sure we're all guilty of it, I'm guilty of it, when you look at the how, you think you can do something about it. You're involved. And this is showing us how much is actually out of our control. Do you kind of come back to that point, and based on your experiences in the hospital, I think just now it's a right time where there's a lot of paradoxes going on. And for me, it really reminds me about that almost tension between taking a day at a time and facing what you have to face at that day, but also never losing hope that you'll come out of it at the end. Do you think that's a relevant approach?
Absolutely. I think, the first thing I did when I woke up in ICU when I was paralyzed was I set two intentions. I set two goals. Before I'd even thought about anything, the first thing I said was I want to ride for Great Britain again, and I want to cycle the Alps. And at that point, that was impossible. And I think but what that did is it installed hope into me. It installed something that I made sure that every morning I woke up and I showed up. And that was the only thing I could do. And then what I realized was that there's a certain ways you could live. The problem is when you set that goal is that you start to live, you can live in your head. And if you live in your head in the future, this is a future that's not even created yet. So it can cause lots of anxiety and lots of stress. And if you're living in your head in the past, then you can have lots of regret and depression. Where if you truly try to live in the moment, and that's my philosophy, is to be where my feet are. So I'm living in the present moment. And if we've got over 84,000 seconds in a day, it's making sure every second in the day has meaning and has a purpose. And ultimately we have no control over how long this is going to be. And I hear people ask, how long's this going to be? And somebody actually said, well, wait a minute, I'll just send an email to the COVID-19 and ask how long it can stay in. No one knows. And I think that what we don't want to do is we don't want to get out of this and be burnt out. And I think at the moment, if we had to track the data on people's stress responses as a world, we're probably very stressed at the moment. And that's putting the sympathetic nervous system into overdrive. And I think what we need to be very mindful of is that we don't own tomorrow. We haven't written the future at the moment. So all we can really do is set some really great goals for when we come out of this. But what can I do today that's going to basically best prepare me for when this is over, so that I'm not showing up completely burnt out because my autonomic nervous system has been on high stress for what could be 3 months, 4 months. We could look at being potentially locked down at home for the whole summer. And I don't think people are maybe not prepared for that. People think it's going to be a 3-week thing. Then I've seen 12 weeks thrown out there now. And first of all, I've seen 2 weeks. And I think people need to be prepared for potentially being locked down for the whole summer. And I was, when I was in hospital in 2016, I woke up in March paralyzed. And I didn't really leave the medical system until the middle of 2017. But I spent 6 very hard months in hospital with no fresh air, people dying around me, and that was tough. And what I realized from that is that there's going to be a lot of people have a lot of trauma during this period.
And I remember seeing you during that period that very quickly after you come out of the operation, you started setting yourself little goals almost immediately, wasn't it? And doing the visualization and
I know. And I worked with you through the 2014 surgery. We did a lot of visualization work. And that's the thing. I set that huge goal of cycling the Alps, which was a crazy goal. Right away, I came back into my body, into the moment. It's like, right, what can I do right now that's going to help me in a year's time or 2 years' time to do that right? And okay, I need to move my toe. So it was like, okay, let's just start visualizing moving my toe, moving a finger, and then because you have a lot of time in your hand when you're paralyzed. And I liken at the moment to it's like everyone's paralyzed at the moment. So almost it's like everyone's woke up and they're paralyzed because they can't go outside. They've lost their identity. They've lost their freedom. They've lost so much stuff that they're paralyzed inside their house. So you have all this time in your hand and you want to invest in it. So when I was lying in that bed and I couldn't move, I was like, right, well, let's start visualizing, because if you visualize so powerfully in your mind, your body can live the experience, and you can start creating these neural pathways. And I completely believe in that 100%. So I spent a lot of time actually inside my mind visualizing a future world that I wanted to live in, and that I wanted my body to be. And ultimately, that's obviously challenged with medical science on a spinal cord injury. My arm was never going to move again, no matter how much I visualized it. But what I did do was set myself up with the best opportunity and best chances in that hospital bed that then I could take on to when I left hospital.
Brilliant. It's amazing. And do you believe anyone that's listening to this or watching us has that capacity to use their mind positively given the circumstances?
Absolutely. I know you hear this is a thing that people say, if I can do it, anyone can do it. I truly stand by that, because I had absolutely no idea about this stuff really until I was properly challenged. And that's the thing in life. You can go through life with denial. You can go through a very, very narrow lens, and then you're challenged, and it actually forces you to look inside and have that conversation. And I guess for me, first diagnosis in 2010, probably brushed over it. Second one in 2014, brushed over it. Did some work with you about the visualization stuff. It wasn't really properly challenged. When I was paralyzed, then I was properly challenged, and I thought, okay, this starts with self-awareness. Let's just start very small. It can be a very overwhelming world to go into the mind, to go into the neuroscience of it. But you can also make it very simple. And you can start off reading like Victor's work. Read that book, and then you start to think about yourself. And what I realized is that if you have two values of discipline and self-awareness, then you just start to notice what's going on inside in your mind. Even I read a lot of work from Daniel Goleman around emotional intelligence, and I started reading that in hospital, and it was a perfect place to read it, because you had 4 people in the ward, and the guy opposite me, he was taking his last few breaths. The guy across from me, he had been stabbed through the neck, and he was sort of rebuilding his life. And the guy in the bed next to me had a brain tumor and probably wasn't going to see the end of 2016. So you're having to deal with all these different emotions. So it was like a perfect training ground. And what I realized was that it's you don't just do it once and then you've got it. This has been ongoing work for me. I started reading these books in 2016, and yesterday I sat for 9 hours reading all these materials and taking notes. And it's like I say, in life we can train 3 things. We can train our craft, our job, our body, and our mind. And people become very, very focused on doing all the physical work and then doing all the work for their job, but they actually forget about their mental housekeeping. And that's important. And I believe anyone can do it. You just have to set some time aside every day to start working on it. Very small. I mean, I do most of my work before you even get out of bed. In the morning. This is not hard work. It just takes to create a habit and create a routine. And now is the perfect time. Now is the perfect time to start this sort of stuff.
That 2 words, awareness and self-discipline, a great couple of values. And we were speaking before we went live there, and I was telling, and this for me is a good example of the human, I suppose our own personal human psyche and our human brain, and how no matter what's going on around us, we get sucked into our own reality. And remember I was saying to you is, I woke up and I've obviously stood on a little sliver of glass or something on my foot, and it's really sore, and it's got a wee bit of thing in it. And for about 10 minutes, anywhere, 5 minutes, my mind goes to that and how important that is. So no matter what's going on around you, that pain or that thing, if you don't watch, you get consumed by it, isn't it? For me, for a real simple example of that is me having that discipline and saying, right, what can I do about that really simply? I can put this on it. I can do that. If it gets any worse, I do this. Isn't it? So for everyone there, when we're talking, isn't it, about discipline, it doesn't have to be huge things. It's just catching your brain and pointing it in the right direction and catching it and bringing it back.
And I think that's really important at the moment, that there's, you know, several things happen when you're put into this stress response. Obviously, the amygdala part of your brain, your part, starts to run away with itself, and that sort of shuts down your rational part. We all become very irrational, and you can see that if you log on to social media. Everyone's an expert. Everyone's giving their opinions, and then that's okay. If we come from a place of compassion and not judgment, people are stressed, people are worried, and people take to social media to express these emotions. And actually, it's probably not a safe place to express these emotions, because they get targeted with other people with their expressions and their emotions, and then all of a sudden it blows up into this huge thing. So I think it's like you say, it's like catching those thoughts and being disciplined in those thoughts. And when you have that amygdala response that you want to jump on Facebook and you want to give your opinion to the world, actually catch it and think, well, okay, where's this going to go? If I type this little message now and hit send when I'm in complete irrational mode, then that's going to trigger off a bunch of other people's emotions, and then we're getting stuck in this negativity loop. And I'm all for sharing information, but I think we need to look at it through a scientific lens. And actually, is this useful information? Is this going to benefit people, rather than is this going to cause an argument? And that's where we need to come from, a place of compassion. And ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to control our nervous system at this moment, so we're not burnt out in 6 months. And you know, it's almost like having a media fast. You know, watch what you need to watch, that you think, I've got enough information. But now the news is repeating itself, like we spoke about every day. It's the same thing, doing the same stuff, and that's causing this little almond-shaped part of our brain to be going, you know, and it's firing off all sorts of stuff. As Professor Steve Pierce would refer it to as the chimp. The chimps are going nuts right now. And everyone's running around going mad. And what people have got to understand is that beliefs are not truths; they're only beliefs. And then if we give them power, okay, then they can become our truths. But actually, they are only just beliefs. And I think it's like you say, let's catch those beliefs when we have them and be like, well, actually, is this a helpful belief, or is this not a helpful belief? And is this actually going to cause arguments and toxicity on social media, or is it actually going to benefit people? And I think this is a great time that we can all start to have this inner work, to work on our own selves and reflect on the person we want to be. And if you ask most people want to be a compassionate, nice person. We just get sometimes hijacked by our chimp mind, which then sets us off into attack mode.
That's so true, Dave. And I was watching, I think it must have been about 5 years ago now, I was watching a documentary on Nick Cave, you know, the great songwriter. And the question was, how are you such a prolific songwriter? And his answer was a brilliant answer. Right? He said, I just start. And he said, I don't judge the first sentence. It's where the first sentence takes me. And I thought, I can use that. Well, you know, my thing's football. I think it's about the first pass, but it's about our thoughts. You know, so it's catching that first thought. Where's it going to take me? Is it going to take me somewhere negative, into a kind of nightmare, as you said, made-up scenario, or take me somewhere that's all right? And
I think that's what we've got to be very mindful at the moment. We have all this massive amounts of information coming in, whether it's via Facebook, Daily Mail, BBC, Sky News. We have this information coming in, and as you know, it goes straight, it comes in, it goes to the amygdala, it triggers this response. And I think the problem is there, from some of the research I've read, is that it comes in a ratio of 9 to 1. So 9 negative bits come into the 1 positive bit. So we're absorbing all this negativity, because ultimately that keeps us safe. The brain processes, it's a survival mode we're in, and we only have this one bit of positive thing, but it gets drowned out with this negativity. So if we can catch these thoughts and actually say, well, actually, you know, I don't want to judge myself, and I don't want to judge other people at a moment where we should be very compassionate right now. But it's also saying that, you know, what's one of the greatest tools to get through this, and we spoke about it earlier on about hope, and actually trained optimism. And actually being optimistic. And I think that's very important at the moment, because again, if you jump onto Facebook, you're getting a mixture of optimistic people, pessimistic people, and then the pessimistic people are triggering your chimp to be getting aggressive, and you burn out a lot of energy. So one of the things I did in hospital, which I think we could all do at the moment as well, so we've got our self-discipline to catch the thoughts, we've got our self-awareness to become aware of our thoughts, and I'm not sure what your thoughts are on gratitude. So I'm grateful for gratitude and being grateful, and the power that has on optimism. There was a study done in Berkeley in America that showed that people who trained with gratitude actually managed to change the ratio of 9 to 1 down to 6 to 1. So they could actually become more optimistic. So I think this is a great time now. Again, we have all this time in our hands. There's so much we can be grateful for.
And I think that's a great point, David, about gratitude and noticing, you know, and especially, you know, certainly our experience and where we live and where we're from. And for us all, sometimes without being a bad person, you can take it for granted.
Absolutely. I took my whole life for granted until I was paralyzed. And I remember lying in hospital, and actually it was Gary Bailey, the old Manchester United player.
Oh yeah.
He actually said to me, he was like, Dave, you need to start practicing gratitude. And I was like, well, you know, what do I really have? I'm kind of paralyzed lying here. And he's like, no, man, you have a lot to be grateful for. Just think about it. And I was like, actually, yeah, you know, I can still speak, I can still see, and I'm still alive. And it's so interesting because we're so focused on the how we live. We get so consumed, and we actually forget that actually just being alive is the best gift we'll ever have. So, you know, you see all these people at the moment, the people who are dying from this, and also not just this, and this is what people need to understand, that you know, I received radiotherapy last year. If I was receiving radiotherapy at the moment, I'd be massively compromised. So it's not just the COVID-19, it's actually the knock-on effect it has for cancer patients, for diabetes patients. You know, people sitting in chemotherapy at the moment, they're at risk of, they're not going to get the best treatment at the moment because the medical resources are pooled. So it's not just the direct impact of COVID, it's also the indirect impact it's having. And I think that in this moment of time where people are getting frustrated, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, well, actually just pause and write down 3 things you're grateful for. And really expand that in one of them, for, you know, write a whole paragraph on one of them, and actually you'll find that, you know what, just having your lungs and the fact that you can breathe is the greatest gift that you will ever have. And everything else you can fix. You can fix, okay, you know, if you lose your job, that's tragic. I'm very compassionate about that. But if you lose your lungs and you can't breathe, then you can't fix your job. So it's about sitting back and thinking, okay, how do I thrive in this situation? And actually, let's start working on this inner work.
Great. We were speaking about this yesterday, Dave, and I agree totally about the gratitude. And we were speaking about creating habits, and maybe we'll speak about that in another conversation. But I did what we were speaking about this morning. So as soon as my feet hit the ground, getting up, I dropped my water, you know, to help me. And I said in my head, well done. And I felt better. And people said, what you said well done for? But, you know, that's just the chemical reaction. But it was funny this morning what happened after I said well done for hydrating myself. I noticed that I was grateful for having clean water.
Yeah, such a small thing, but such a huge thing.
Small thing. And I thought, God, I'm really lucky. And as you said there, it's noticing this part because of the negativity bias. The brain has that, isn't it? The negativity bias that because it's amygdala's on to look for threat. That's how it's built. So you have to train it to look to the other thing. You know, you have to train it.
And that's training optimism, and and that the best way to train optimism is through gratitude. And ultimately gratitude to yourself and compassion to yourself. And it's like I do the same thing with, you know, this is a perfect time to. You could do 2 things at the moment. You could ingrain a lot of bad, negative, judgmental habits. You're getting caught up in the social media, you're getting caught up in the arguments of everything, whether it's right or wrong. You know, at the moment you can almost say, well, maybe there is no right and wrong, it's just somebody's decision in that moment, and then there'll be a consequence to their decision. And rather than being hard on people and saying, well, they should be doing this and they should be doing that and this is not getting done, that's just all negativity. You're putting negative energy out into the universe. So it's like, I wake up every morning, I take my heart rate variability for 5 minutes. During that time, I sit and I visualize my life I want. I set intentions. I say my gratitude. I do my self-awareness on my breathing. So before I've even got out of bed, I've done my mindfulness work. I've done my intentions, my goals, and my gratitude. And I've not even put my feet on the floor. Then like you, I put my feet on the floor. I stand up and I say, I'm grateful I can stand. And that just sets up your whole day on a completely different energy field than what it would do if you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I'm stuck in here again. I don't really have anything to get out of bed for. Oh, you know, this isolation's killing me. So already you're going to the negative bias. We need to start catching those thoughts, and the best way to do that is to create a routine of gratitude, of mindfulness, and then getting up and doing some exercise. And if you do those 3 things for this 3, 12, 6, 2 months, whatever it is we've got at the moment, you can start to create really good habits that when we go back to life, you're going to be a new person.
Superb. So thanks for your time, Dave. So when we're looking at the air, we covered a lot in that. So covered a lot. Some of the key points, probably 3 key points there, is finishing on gratitude, noticing what have you got to be grateful for, and write it down. Notice the habits. What's the simple little habits as well you want to develop to help you moving forward on this, and with optimism as well. And actually as well have that thing about what's your big why. And I think maybe it's worth saying, I'm sure you might agree with this, sometimes people get put off with the why. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, does it?
No, it really doesn't. And I think that's the thing, is realizing that if it becomes very fancy, you're probably getting caught with the how. The why we live is very, very simple. We're very simple beings, and ultimately you'll see that through this process, is that people will become very content with the fact they're just alive.
Brilliant. And I think just to finish with, that reminds me of Alan Watts. Alan Watts, the great kind of Buddhist, spiritual philosopher. That's what he said. And I seen this quote. It popped up because I'd posted it about 2 years before, and it popped up 2 days ago on my phone, and it said, "The point of life is life." That's it. That's it.
And these great minds like Alan Watts, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, these guys, Lao Tzu, they're really great reads. And at the moment, if people have got a ton of time in their hand, go and read some of these books and workings, or sign up to Coursera and do a really short course. There's a great course on there from Stanford, I think it is, or Yale, one of the 2 courses, and it's from The Science of Health and Happiness.
Brilliant. The Science of Health and Happiness.
It's like a 6-week little course that you can sign up to, and it's great. It's from a Harvard professor, I can't remember her name, but she talks about just what makes you happy, and actually it's the simple things.
That's superb. Well, thanks for your time, Dave, and we'll speak again soon.
I look forward to it, guys. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
God bless.